Close your eyes. Imagine holding a book so fragile that the pages crumble at your fingertips. The leather cover, once deep brown, has faded to the color of dust. Inside, in handwriting that trembles between hope and exhaustion, are words written by a woman who had been told she was property and who became, against all odds, free. Her name was Sarah Mae Johnson. And this is her diary. It was found in 1923. Tucked inside the walls of a small wooden church in rural Georgia, church built by freed people with their own hands, their own prayers, their own unbreakable will. The diary spans 3 years, 1866 to 1869, 3 years that held more transformation, more pain, more resurrection than most lifetimes ever see. If you've ever felt lost, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from ashes, if you've ever wondered where faith finds you when everything else has been stripped to waste, with me. Because Sarah's story isn't just history, it's a mirror, it's a lesson, it's a testimony that speaks across time, whispering to anyone who has ever had to start over with nothing but hope and morning light. The first entry is dated April 3, 1866, nearly 1 year after the war ended, nearly 1 year after the word freedom stopped being a whisper and became, suddenly, terrifyingly, beautifully real. Sarah was 32 years old. She had been enslaved on a cotton plantation in southern Georgia since birth. She had survived 22 years of marriage to a man named Jacob, sold away from her when she was 27. She had borne 4 children, 2 she buried, 2 she never saw again, and now she was free. But what does freedom mean when you own nothing? When you cannot read the contracts they want you to sign? When the only home you've ever known has cast you out like chaff from wheat? When freedom means you can starve in peace, grieve without permission, walk roads that lead nowhere because nowhere will have you. Sarah's first words in that diary were not triumphant. They were not joyful. They were this: I am free. Lord, what do I do with that? There is a weight in that question that most of us will never carry. Freedom, for Sarah, was not a gift wrapped in glory. It was a door opened onto an empty field. It was a sunrise with no breakfast. It was the terrifying, sacred responsibility of deciding, for the first time in her life, what happened next. She did not write every day. Paper was expensive. Ink was a luxury. The diary itself, a gift from a missionary woman passing through, was the most valuable thing Sarah owned. So she wrote only when the words were too heavy to hold inside. She wrote in the margins of her exhaustion. She wrote by candlelight, after days spent washing clothes for white families who would not let her through the front door. She wrote because writing was the only way to make sense of a world that made no sense at all. And she wrote about faith. Not the faith of sermons, not the faith of Sunday morning performances. The faith of someone clinging to God because there was nothing else left to cling to. The faith of spirituals sung in the dark. The faith that says, I don't know how, Lord, but I'm still here. The faith that rebuilds, one breath at a time. In Block 2, we'll step into the pages of Sarah's diary, into the raw, unvarnished struggle of those first months of freedom. We'll see what she saw, feel what she felt, and understand that survival, for freed people like Sarah, was not just about food and shelter. It was about reclaiming your own soul from a system designed to crush it. If you've ever had to rebuild your life from nothing, if this story resonates with you, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to remember that resilience is written in our bones. Because Sarah's voice, though quiet, still speaks. And every voice that remembers her keeps the flame of the past alive. This is Voices of the Past, and this is Sarah's story. April 3, 1866. The first entry. 7 lines written in careful, halting script letters formed slowly, deliberately, because Sarah had only learned to write 2 years before. In secret, by the light of stolen candles, taught by an enslaved man named Thomas, who had once belonged to a preacher. I am free, she wrote. Lord, what do I do with that? Jacob gone, children gone. Massa Williams say we got to leave by Sunday. Nowhere to go, but I got to believe you see me. Got to. 7 lines. That was all. But in those 7 lines is everything you need to know about what freedom actually meant in 1866. Freedom did not mean safety, it meant displacement. Former enslavers, stripped of their labor force, turned people out with nothing, no money, no possessions, no references, no legal protections. Freedmen's Bureau offices were overwhelmed, understaffed, underfunded. The Ku Klux Klan was forming in Tennessee. Black codes were being written into law across the South, criminalizing unemployment, loitering, gathering in groups, ways to re-enslave through legislation what had been lost through war. Sarah left the Williams plantation on April 8, 1866, carrying everything she owned in a burlap sack: one dress, one shawl, a tin cup, a small Bible she could barely read, and the diary. She walked 17 miles to the nearest town, a place called Milford, where she had heard there was a Freedman's Bureau office and a church that helped comrades. She wrote about that walk, about the road dust that coated her throat, about the way her feet bled through the cloth she de-wrapped them in because she had no shoes, about stopping by a creek to drink and seeing her reflection for the first time in water that was unto work bucket, and not recognizing the woman staring back. "I look old," she wrote. "Older than Mama was when she died, but I ain't old. I'm 32 and just now learning to be a person. Just now learning to be a person. Just now learning to be a person." Let that sink in. 32 years of life, and this was the first time she was allowed to define herself as fully human. Not property, not a tool, not a commodity. A person, with thoughts, with rights, with a future that belonged to her, even if that future was uncertain and terrifying. When Sarah reached Milford, she found chaos. Hundreds of freed people, just like her, sleeping in alleys, under trees, in abandoned sheds. The Freedmen's Bureau had one agent for the entire county, a young white man from Ohio named Mr. Pemberton, overwhelmed and earnest, doing his best with almost no resources. The church, a small African Methodist Episcopal congregation, was overflowing. Families packed into the sanctuary, children crying, old people coughing, everyone asking the same question: what now? Sarah stood in the back of that church on her first Sunday in Milford. She had no money to give, no connection to offer, no skills the world recognized as valuable. She was invisible in every way that mattered to the new economy of freedom. But then the congregation sang. It was Wade in the Water, not the sanitized version you hear in concerts today. The raw, guttural, bone-deep version that had been sung in fields and at secret gatherings and over graves. The kind of singing that doesn't ask God politely. It demands, it wrestles, it refuses to let go until blessing comes. And Sarah, exhausted, homeless, alone, opened her mouth and sang with them. She wrote about that moment later, in an entry dated April 15, 1866. "I thought I had no voice left, thought they took it all. But when I opened my mouth in that church, something came out of me I didn't know was still there. Wasn't pretty, wasn't polite, but it was mine, and God heard it. I know He did, because I'm still standing." That church became Sarah's anchor, not because it offered solutions it didn't, not because it had money or land or jobs it didn't, but because it offered something more essential than any of that. It offered belonging. It offered a space where freed people could gather, could worship without white overseers, could be fully human in the presence of a God who had always seen them, even when the world refused to. Sarah found work washing clothes for white families. Brutal, back-breaking work. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, standing over boiling pots of lye and water, scrubbing stains out of garments she could never afford to wear. She was paid 75 cents a week, barely enough for a rented corner of a room she shared with 3 other women, barely enough for cornmeal and fatback, barely enough to survive. But she survived, and she wrote. Every week or two, she made an entry, sometimes just a sentence, sometimes a page. She wrote about the ache in her back, the burns on her hands, the dreams she had of her children's dreams, where they were still small, still hers, still close enough to hold. She wrote about missing Jacob, about wondering if he was alive, if he ever thought of her, if freedom had found him too, or if it had broken him the way it was threatening to break her. And she wrote about faith. Always, she came back to faith. Some days, she wrote in May 1866, "I don't feel God nowhere, feel like He turned His face. But then I remember He was with us in the fields. He was with us in the quarters. He was with us when they sold our babies. If He was with us then, He with us now. He got to be. Because if He ain't, I don't know how we're still breathing." Stay with me, because in Block 3, Sarah's story takes a turn. She meets someone who will change everything. Someone who will teach her that rebuilding isn't just about survival, it's about reclaiming your name, your voice, your right to dream again. And that kind of rebuilding, that takes more than strength. It takes something Sarah was only beginning to understand. She still had hope. June 1866, 2 months after Sarah arrived in Milford. 2 months of washing clothes until her hands cracked and bled. 2 months of sleeping on a floor she shared with women whose names she barely knew because exhaustion left no room for conversation. 2 months of surviving, but not yet living. And then she met Reverend Elijah Wright. Reverend Wright was a freed man from South Carolina, 47 years old, formerly enslaved, formerly illiterate, formerly invisible. But he had taught himself to read, using a Bible and sheer determination. He had walked from South Carolina to Georgia with one mission: to build schools, to teach freed people to read, write, and understand the laws that now govern them, laws written in a language designed to keep them ignorant and dependent. He arrived in Milford in late May with nothing but a Bible, a primer, and an unshakable belief that education was the only weapon strong enough to fight the invisible chains still binding black people in the South. Sarah first saw him preaching outside the AIM Church on a Sunday afternoon. Not inside, he wasn't ordained yet, not officially, but that didn't stop him. He stood on an overturned crate and spoke in a voice that carried like thunder and landed like rain. "They told us we were nothing," he said. "Told us we had no minds, no souls, no futures. And now they tell us we free, but they aren't tell us how to read the contracts they want us to sign. Don't tell us how to protect ourselves from laws designed to trap us. Don't tell us how to own land, start businesses, build wealth. Why? Because they know what we're starting to learn, that knowledge is power. And they don't want us powerful." He paused, looking out over the crowd, dozens of freed people, listening, hungry. "But here's what they don't know," Reverend Wright continued. "We've always been powerful. We survived. We endured. We kept our families together when they tried to tear us apart. We held on to God when they used God to justify our chains. We are still here. And now we're going to learn. We're going to read. We're going to write our own futures. And nobody can stop us." Sarah stood at the edge of that crowd, and something in her chest cracked open, not broke, opened like a door she didn't know was there. After the sermon, she approached him, nervous, hands shaking. She had never been good at speaking up. 32 years of being told to stay quiet, stay small, stay invisible. It doesn't disappear just because someone says you're free. But she forced the words out. "Reverend," she said, "I want to learn. I can write a little, but I want to learn more. I want to read, really read, not just the easy words, all of it." Reverend Wright looked at her, not through her, not past her, but at her, really saw her, and he smiled. "What's your name, sister?" "Sarah," she said. "Sarah what?" She hesitated. Under slavery, she had been Sarah, belonging to Williams. No last name, no identity beyond ownership. And even though she was free now, she hadn't thought about what name to claim, hadn't thought she had the right to choose. "I don't know," she admitted. "Just Sarah." Reverend Wright nodded slowly. "Then that's where we start," he said. "You want to learn. First lesson, you get to name yourself. You're not property anymore. You're a woman, a child of God, and you get to decide who you are. So who do you want to be?" Sarah stood there, silent, as the weight of that question settled over her. Who did she want to be? She thought of her mother, whose name she barely remembered. She thought of Jacob, her husband, lost somewhere in the chaos of freedom. She thought of the plantation, the fields, the quarters, the life she had been forced to live, but that was not hers. And then she thought of the morning she left, the sunrise, the road stretching out ahead of her, the terrifying, exhilarating emptiness of it. "Sarah Mae," she said finally. "Sarah Mae Freeman." Freeman, not Williams, not any name tied to the people who had owned her. Freeman, a name that declared what she was now, what she would always be, no matter what came next. Reverend Wright grinned. "Sarah Mae Freeman," he repeated. "That's a good name, a strong name. Now let's teach you to write it." And he did. Sarah started attending Reverend Wright's makeshift school. It met 3 evenings a week in the back room of the AIM Church. 15, sometimes 20 freed people, men, women, teenagers, elders crowded onto benches, holding slates and chalk, learning letters, learning words, learning how to write their own names for the first time. It was slow, it was hard. Sarah's hands, stiff and scarred from years of labor, struggled to form the letters. Her eyes, tired from long days of work, strained to focus in the dim candlelight, but she didn't stop. She wrote about it in her diary in July 1866. "Tonight, I wrote my whole name. Sarah Mae Freeman, all by myself. Reverend Wright didn't help. I just wrote it, and when I finished, I looked at it on the slate, and I cried, because it was mine, my name, my hand, my choice. For the first time in my life, something that belonged to me and nobody else. If I die tomorrow, at least I die knowing I got to name myself. Learning to write her name was more than a skill. It was a reclamation. It was taking back what had been stolen, her identity, her agency, her right to exist as a person, not as property. And it was the beginning of something bigger. By August, Sarah wasn't just learning, she was teaching. She helped younger students with their letters. She stayed after class to practice reading aloud from the Bible, stumbling over words but refusing to quit. She started dreaming, not big dreams, not yet, but small ones, real ones. She dreamed of finding her children, of learning to read well enough to write letters, to search for them, to send word that their mother was alive and free and hadn't forgotten them. She dreamed of saving enough money to rent her own room, not a corner of someone else's space, but a whole room, with a door she could close, a bed she didn't have to share. She dreamed of one day owning a piece of land, just a small piece, enough to grow vegetables, enough to stand on and say, "This is mine." Small dreams. But for someone who had spent 32 years with no right to dream at all, they were everything. In Block 4, Sarah's faith is tested in ways she never imagined, because freedom in the South in the 1860s was not just a gift, it was a battleground. And Sarah was about to learn that rebuilding yourself means fighting for the right to exist not just once, but every single day. Stay with me, because this is where Sarah's story becomes not just a testimony of survival, but a testament to the kind of faith that refuses to break, no matter how many times it's bent. September 1866. 5 months of freedom. 5 months of Sarah washing clothes, learning to read, attending church, slowly, painfully rebuilding a life that resembled something human. 5 months of small victories, a word mastered, a coin saved, a name claimed. And then the violence came. It started with threats, whispers in the market, white men watching freed people with hard eyes and clenched fists, notes left on church doors. "Niggers, go back where you came from. This is white man's land. You will pay for your freedom." The Freedmen's Bureau agent, Mr. Pemberton, tried to reassure people. He held meetings. He reminded everyone that they had rights now, that the law protected them. But the law, in 1866 Georgia, was a fragile thing. And the men making threats didn't care about laws written by Yankees in Washington. On September 14, 1866, the church where Sarah attended, the church where Reverend Wright held his school, was burned to the ground. It happened at night. No one was inside, thank God. But by morning, all that remained was charred wood, ash, and the smell of smoke that clung to everything. The benches where Sarah had learned to write her name, the altar where she had sung "Wade in the Water," the back room where freed people had gathered to teach and learn and reclaim their humanity. Gone. Sarah wrote about it 3 days later. Her handwriting, usually careful and deliberate, was shaky, rushed, angry. They burned it, burned our church, burned the place where we prayed, where we learned, where we were safe. Why? Because they can't stand to see us free, can't stand to see us learning, can't stand to see us becoming something they said we never could be. They want us scared, want us gone, want us to forget we're human. But I won't forget. We won't forget. Lord, I'm angry. I know I shouldn't say that. I know I should forgive. But right now, I'm angry. And I don't know what to do with that. Anger is not a sin. Let me say that clearly. Sarah's anger was not a moral failing. It was a righteous response to injustice. It was the anger of someone who had survived unspeakable cruelty and was being told, even now, that she had no right to peace, no right to dignity, no right to exist without terror. But anger, righteous as it was, couldn't rebuild the church, and anger couldn't protect her from what came next. 2 weeks after the fire, Reverend Wright was beaten. 3 white men caught him on the road outside town. They accused him of stirring up trouble, of teaching freed people to be uppity, of making them think they deserved the same rights as white folks. They broke his arm, cracked 2 ribs, left him bleeding in the dirt. When Sarah heard, she ran to the boarding house where he was recovering. She found him lying on a cot, his face swollen, his arm bound in makeshift splints. But when he saw her, he smiled. It was a broken smile, full of pain, but it was real. "Sister Sarah," he said, "you came." "Of course I came." she said, her voice shaking. "Reverend, they could have killed you. They tried," he said. "But I'm still here." "Why?" she asked. "Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep teaching? Keep preaching? Keep pushing? They're going to kill you. They're going to kill all of us." Reverend Wright was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because if I stop, they win. If we stop, they win. They want us afraid, want us silent, want us to forget we're made in the image of God. But I remember, and I'm going to keep teaching until every freed person in this county remembers too." Sarah sat beside him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared, Reverend, I'm so scared." "I know," he said. "Me too. But fear doesn't mean we stop. It just means we're human." He reached for her hand, his good hand, the one that wasn't broken, and he held it. "Sarah Mae Freeman," he said. "You know what your name means. Freeman. Free. They can burn our churches. They can beat our bodies. They can threaten us with death. But they can't take that name away from you. You're free. And that's not something they gave you. That's something God gave you. And nobody can steal it." That moment changed something in Sarah. Not because she stopped being afraid, but because she realized that fear and faith can coexist. That courage is unto the absence of terror. It's the decision to keep walking even when you're re-terrified. The church rebuilt. Not with money, there was no money, but with hands. Freed people came from all over the county. They brought scraps of wood, nails, tools, whatever they could spare, and they built a new church, smaller than the first, simpler, but theirs. They raised the walls in 1 week. Men and women working side by side, singing as they hammered and sawed, singing the spirituals that had carried them through slavery, singing because singing was resistance, singing because joy, in the face of oppression, is an act of defiance. Sarah was there every day after work. She carried water, held boards steady, sang until her voice was hoarse. And on the day they finished, when they stood back and looked at what they had built together, she cried. She wrote about it in October 1866. "Today we finished the church. It ain't much, but it's ours. They burned the first one, thinking that would break us. But all they did was show us we can build again, and again, and again, as many times as we need to, because we are still here, we are still free, and we are still God's children. They can't burn that." Faith, for Sarah, was no longer abstract. It was concrete. It was showing up even when you were terrified. It was singing when your voice shook. It was building when your hands bled. It was believing that God was present not in the absence of suffering, but in the strength to endure it. In Block 5, Sarah's faith takes her somewhere she never imagined, back to the plantation where she was enslaved, not as property, but as a woman searching for what was stolen from her. And what she finds there will redefine what freedom and forgiveness really mean. If this story is stirring something in you, don't hold it in. Comment below, share it. Let Sarah's voice echo forward, because every voice that remembers keeps the flame alive. March 1867. Nearly 2 years since the war ended. 1 year since Sarah left the Williams plantation with nothing but a burlap sack and a burning need to survive. 1 year since she walked 17 miles to Milford, found a church, found a name, found herself. And now she was going back, not to stay, God, no, but to search. Because Sarah had spent every night since freedom haunted by the same question. Where are my children? Her daughter Lila would be 11 now. Her son Samuel, 9. Both had been sold away in 1863 when their ancestor, Jonah Williams, needed cash to keep the plantation running during the war. Sold to a man named Talbot, a cotton broker from Alabama. That was all Sarah knew. Talbot, Alabama, 2 words that held her entire world. For a year, she had asked everyone she met, Freedmen's Bureau agents, missionaries, other freed people, traveling through Milford. Have you seen them? Have you heard of a Talbot in Alabama? Do you know where they sell children when war is coming and money is tight? No one knew. Or if they did, they couldn't help. But in February 1867, Sarah met an older woman named Clara who had just arrived in Milford from Alabama. Clara had been enslaved near Montgomery, and when Sarah mentioned the name Talbot, Clara's eyes went wide. "Talbot," Clara said, "big man, red face, cotton plantation outside Montgomery." Sarah's heart stopped. "You know him, know of him," Clara said. "He got a reputation, mean, works people hard, but he still got his plantation. Still got folks working for him, some free, some still trapped by contracts they can't read. Clara didn't know if Lila and Samuel were there, but it was the first real lead Sarah had gotten in 2 years. So she made a decision. She would go back to the Williams plantation, not because she wanted to, God knows she didn't, but because Jonah Williams might have records, might have bills of sale, might remember where he sent her babies. It was a risk. Going back meant facing the man who had owned her, facing the fields where she had bled, facing the memories that still woke her up screaming in the night. But Sarah was learning something about freedom. It isn't passive. Freedom is the courage to walk into your own pain and demand answers. She wrote about the decision in her diary. Tomorrow I go back. I don't want to. Every part of me says no. But my children are out there somewhere, and I can't find them if I stay afraid. So I'll go. I'll face him. And I'll do what I got to do. Because that's what mothers do. We face monsters. For our babies, we face anything. The walk back to the Williams plantation took all day. Sarah left Milford at dawn, carrying water and a piece of cornbread. She wore the same dress she'd worn when she left a year ago still, the only dress she owned. Her hands, scarred from washing clothes, trembled as she walked, not from cold, from memory. Every mile brought back something. The creek where she used to fetch water before sunrise, the oak tree where her mother was buried, the road she had walked 1,000 times, invisible, a ghost in her own life. When she reached the plantation, she stopped at the edge of the property. The big house stood in the distance, white columns gleaming in the afternoon sun. The fields stretched out, brown and fallow now, waiting for spring planting. The quarters, the ramshackle cabins where she had lived for 32 years still stood, though many were empty now, abandoned by freed people who had fled the moment freedom was real. Sarah stood there, breathing hard, fighting the instinct to run. But she didn't run. She walked. She walked up the long drive to the big house. She climbed the steps to the porch steps she had swept 1,000 times, but never been allowed to walk up as anything other than property. And she knocked on the door. Jonah Williams answered. He was older now, thinner, his face more lined. The war had taken something from him, too, not his humanity. He'd never had much of that but his wealth, his confidence, his certainty that the world would always bend to his will. When he saw Sarah, his eyes narrowed. What do you want? Sarah's voice shook, but she forced the words out. I want to know where you sent my children, Leela and Samuel. You sold them in 1863 to a man named Talbot. I need to know where. William stared at her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he laughed cold, bitter, mean. Your children, he said. They weren't yours. They were mine, and I sold them because I needed the money. That's all there is to it. Sarah felt rage rise in her throat, hot and sharp, but she swallowed it. She couldn't afford rage. Not here, not now. Where? She repeated. Did you send them? Something in her voice, something hard, unyielding made Williams hesitate. He wasn't used to freed people speaking to him like that. Wasn't used to being challenged. But Sarah wasn't the woman he remembered. She was Sarah Mae Freeman now, and she wasn't asking permission. Williams went inside, came back with a ledger, flipped through pages, stopped. Talbot, he said. James Talbot, Montgomery, Alabama. Cotton plantation outside the city. Paid me $600 for the pair. He looked at Sarah. That's all I know. Now get off my property. Sarah nodded. She didn't thank him. She just turned and walked away. She didn't cry. Not yet. Not until she was back on the road, far enough away that he couldn't see her. And then she stopped, leaned against a tree, and wept. Not from sadness, from relief, from hope. Because now she knew. James Talbot, Montgomery, Alabama. A name, a place, a direction. She wrote that night. I faced him, the man who owned me, who sold my babies like cattle, who took everything from me and called it business. I faced him, and I didn't break. I got what I came for. Now I know where to look. Lord, I don't know if my children are still there. I don't know if they remember me. I don't know if I'll ever find them. But I'm going to try, because I'm free now, and that means I get to fight for them. That means I get to hope. In Block 6, we'll follow Sarah to Alabama. We'll see what she finds and what she learns about love, loss, and the kind of faith that says, even if I lose, I had to try, because that's what rebuilding is. It's not about guarantees. It's about refusing to give up, even when the odds are impossible. Sarah Mae Freeman left for Alabama in April 1867. She had saved every penny she could for 6 months, money scraped together from washing clothes, from mending, from doing whatever work white families would pay a black woman to do. By the time she left, she had $3.40, enough for passage on a wagon heading south, enough for a few days of food, not enough for much else. She told Reverend Wright she was going. He tried to talk her out of it. "Sarah," he said, "Alabama is dangerous, more dangerous than Georgia. The Klan is stronger there. The laws are harsher. You're a black woman traveling alone. If something happens to you, then something happens." Sarah interrupted. "But I can't stay here wondering. I can't die not knowing if I tried." Reverend Wright nodded slowly. He understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. Before she left, he prayed over her. Not a long prayer, not a fancy one. Just this: "Lord, keep Sarah's feet steady, keep her heart strong, and if she finds her children, bring them all home safe. Amen, amen," Sarah whispered. The journey to Montgomery took 9 days. Sarah traveled with a group of freed people heading south to look for family, work, or both. They slept under trees, shared food, sang spirituals to pass the time and to remind themselves they were not alone. When Sarah finally arrived at the Talbot plantation, she was exhausted, dusty, and terrified. But she didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the overseer's shack and asked to see James Talbot. He made her wait. 2 hours in the sun. A test, maybe, or just cruelty. Finally, he came out, a big man with a red face and cold eyes. "What do you want?" he said. "I'm looking for my children," Sarah said. "Lila and Samuel. You bought them from Jonah Williams in Georgia in 1863. I need to know if they're here." Talbot stared at her. Then he laughed. "You walked all the way from Georgia for that?" "Yes," Sarah said. He shook his head. "They're not here." Sarah's heart dropped. "Where are they?" "Sold them," Talbot said. "Year ago, man named Carson had a plantation further south, needed field hands. I don't know where he is now. Don't care." Sarah stood there, frozen. All this way, all this hope, and the trail ended here, in the dust, with a man who couldn't even remember the names of the children he'd traded like livestock. But then something happened. A woman, one of the workers on Talbot's plantation, approached. She was older, maybe 50, with kind eyes and hands worn from labor. "Excuse me, sir," she said to Talbot. "I know Carson. He's got a place near Selma. His wife's cousin works at the mill where my sister lives. I can get word to them." Talbot waved her off, annoyed. "Fine, whatever." He turned and walked away. The woman looked at Sarah. "You really there, Mama?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. "Then come with me. I'll help you write a letter. Can't promise it'll reach them, but it's better than nothing." That woman's name was Esther, and she became Sarah's lifeline. For 3 days, Sarah stayed near the plantation, sleeping in Esther's cabin, helping with chores, waiting. Esther helped her write a letter to Carson's plantation, a letter that said, "My name is Sarah Mae Freeman. I am a freed woman from Georgia. I am looking for my daughter Lila and my son Samuel, sold to you in 1866. They would be 11 and 9 years old. Now, if they are with you, please tell them their mother is alive and searching for them. Please." They sent the letter, and then Sarah waited. Days turned into weeks. Sarah took work in Montgomery, washing clothes again, saving money, staying close in case word came back. She attended a small church there. She kept writing in her diary. She kept praying. And then, in June 1867, a letter arrived. It was short, written in careful, simple handwriting. It said, "Mama, it's me, Lila. We are in Selma. Samuel is here too. He remembers you. We thought you were dead. Please come if you can. Please." Sarah read that letter 10 times, 20. She read it until the words blurred, and then she fell to her knees and wept. She wrote in her diary that night, "I found them. God, I found them. They're alive. They remember me. I'm going to see my babies again. After 4 years, after thinking I'd lost them forever, I'm going to hold them again. This is what faith looks like. Not certainty, not ease, not protection from pain. Faith is walking into the impossible and believing that somehow, some way, God will make a way. And he did. He did." Sarah reached Selma 2 weeks later. She found the plantation where Lila and Samuel were working, not enslaved anymore, but trapped in sharecropping contracts that might as well have been chains. When she saw them, she barely recognized them. Lila was taller, thinner, older than 11 years should make anyone look. Samuel's eyes held a hardness that broke Sarah's heart. But when Lila saw her mother walking across that field, She ran, and Sarah caught her. They stood there, in the dirt, holding each other, sobbing. Samuel came too, slower, uncertain. But when Sarah reached for him, he collapsed into her arms. "I'm here," Sarah whispered. "I'm here. I never stopped looking. I never stopped." Sarah spent the next 3 months working to free her children from their sharecropping contract. It wasn't easy. It required lawyers Freedman's Bureau, lawyers who worked for almost nothing. It required proof that the contract was fraudulent, that the children had been coerced. It required every ounce of strength Sarah had left. But in September 1867, she did it. She freed them, and together Sarah, Lila, and Samuel, they walked away from that plantation and headed back to Georgia, back to Milford, back to the church that had rebuilt itself, back to Reverend Wright and Esther and Clara and the community of freed people who had become Sarah's family. The last entry in Sarah's diary is dated December 31st, 1869, 3 years after her first entry. 3 years of struggle, loss, fear, and faith. She wrote, "Tonight is the last night of this year and this decade. I don't know what the next one will bring. I don't know if we'll have enough food. I don't know if they'll let us vote or own land or live in peace. I don't know if the world will ever see us as fully human. But I know this, I am free. My children are with me. We have a roof over our heads and a church that welcomes us and a God who sees us, and that is enough. I was told I was nothing. I was told I had no future, no worth, no voice. But I am Sarah Mae Freeman. I can read, I can write, I can name myself, and I can fight for my children and for my people and for my right to exist. They tried to break me, but I am still here. This is what rebuilding looks like. Not perfection, not ease, not the absence of struggle. Rebuilding is waking up every day and choosing to keep going. It's singing when you want to scream. It's hoping when hope seems foolish. It's believing that you are worth fighting for, even when the world says you're not. I don't know who will read this diary one day. Maybe no one. Maybe my grandchildren, if I'm blessed to have them. Maybe a stranger, long after I'm gone. But if you're reading this, know this. You are stronger than you think. You are more resilient than you know. And you are never, ever alone. Keep the faith. Keep rebuilding. Keep singing, because we are still here. And that is a miracle all by itself. Close your eyes one more time. Can you see her? Sarah Mae Freeman, 35 years old. Freed woman, mother, fighter, believer, standing in a small room in Milford, Georgia, with her children asleep beside her and a diary in her lap. Can you see her writing by candlelight, her scarred hands moving carefully across the page, leaving words that would outlive her, that would speak across time, that would remind you that rebuilding is always possible? Sarah's diary was found in 1923, hidden in the walls of the church she helped rebuild. The church that had been burned and raised again. The church that stood as a testament to the fact that you cannot destroy what refuses to die. Her words have survived. Her voice has survived. And in surviving, she teaches us something we desperately need to remember in our own age. That resilience is not about never falling. It's about getting up every single time and choosing to keep building. If this story has moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Comment below. Tell us about the Sarah Mae Freemans in your own family, the people who rebuilt themselves from nothing, who fought for dignity in a world designed to deny it, who kept the faith when faith was all they had. Because every voice that remembers keeps the flame of the past alive. And that flame, it still burns. This was another episode of Voices of the Past, from Ancient Memories of America. Thank you for listening to Sarah's story. Thank you for keeping her memory alive. This is the America we remember. And this refusal to be broken, this insistence on hope, this faith that rebuilds, this is the legacy we carry forward.